The scream that tore through the Bloodmoon Pack territory wasn't one of victory. It was pure, animalistic agony. Prince Kieran Blackthorne collapsed to his knees in the sacred shifting circle, his body convulsing as bones tried to break and reform, only to snap back into their human configuration. Around him, the pack elders watched in horrified silence as their future alpha failed his transformation for the third time in as many months. "Stop," wheezed Elder Morrigan, her weathered hands trembling. "The boy will kill himself." But Kieran couldn't stop. Wouldn't stop. Not when his younger brother Damon stood at the circle's edge, smirking with the confidence of someone who had shifted perfectly on his 16th birthday. Not when the pack whispered about the broken prince behind closed doors. Not when his father, Alpha Magnus, looked at him with barely concealed disappointment burning in his golden eyes. The transformation attempt ended as they always did, with Kieran unconscious, bleeding from a dozen internal injuries, and no closer to claiming his birthright. Perhaps, Damon's voice cut through the night air like poisoned honey. The moon goddess is telling us something about our future leadership. That's when everything changed. That's when the old witch doctor stepped out of the shadows, her silver hair gleaming under the full moon, and spoke words that would either save Kieran's life or destroy everything he thought he knew about himself. "The prince is not broken," Moira Ravenscroft announced, her ancient voice carrying across the pack grounds. "He is incomplete, and I know how to make him whole." The witch's bargain. The pack council chamber fell silent as Moira Ravenscroft limped into the sacred space, her gnarled walking stick tapping against the stone floor like a death knell. Even Alpha Magnus straightened in his throne, recognizing the power that radiated from the old woman despite her frail appearance. "You dare enter our territory uninvited, witch?" Magnus growled, but there was no real menace in his voice. Everyone knew the stories about Moira, how she had walked between the realms of life and death for over 2 centuries, how she had saved more supernatural creatures than she had cursed, how even the most powerful alphas sought her counsel when their packs faced extinction. "Uninvited," Moira cackled, revealing teeth that gleamed too sharp in the torchlight. "Your son's screams have been calling to me for months, Magnus Blackthorne. The boy's soul is literally tearing itself apart." Kieran, still weak from his latest failed transformation, struggled to sit up straighter in his chair. "What do you mean incomplete?" Moira's pale blue eyes fixed on him with an intensity that made his skin crawl. "You are not the first of your kind to suffer this affliction, young prince. There are wolves who are born split, their souls divided between 2 natures that can only be united through the ancient bonding ritual." "Bonding?" Damon stepped forward, his perfect features twisted with suspicion. "What kind of bonding?" "The kind that requires an omega," Moira replied, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Not just any omega, his true mate, the other half of his fractured soul." The implications hit the council like a physical blow. Omegas were the rarest of werewolves, perhaps 1 in 10,000 births. They were powerful beyond measure but vulnerable, hunted by rival packs, often killed before they could reach maturity. The Bloodmoon Pack hadn't seen an omega in over 50 years. "Impossible," Alpha Magnus snarled. "We would know if there was an omega in our territory." Moira smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. "Would you? Tell me, Alpha, when was the last time you checked the human settlements beyond your borders? When was the last time you considered that an omega might be hiding in plain sight, suppressing their nature to survive?" Kieran's heart hammered against his ribs. Hope, dangerous, desperate hope, began to bloom in his chest. "You know where to find them." "I know where to find her," Moira corrected. "But the path will not be easy, young prince. You will face challenges that will test every aspect of your character. You will discover truths about yourself that may shatter everything you believe. And you will have to choose between the crown you were born to wear and the bond that might save your soul." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle over the chamber. "The question is, how much are you willing to sacrifice for the chance to become whole?" The hunt begins. 3 days later, Kieran stood at the edge of Bloodmoon territory with nothing but a backpack, his father's grudging blessing and Moira's cryptic directions. The witch had refused to accompany him, claiming that the journey itself was part of his trial. "Remember," she had whispered as he prepared to leave, "the Omega you seek has been hiding for reasons of survival. She will not trust easily. You must prove yourself worthy not through strength or status, but through the content of your character." Now, as he crossed into neutral territory for the first time in his life, Kieran felt the weight of his pack's expectations pressing down on him like a physical force. Behind him lay everything he had ever known, and his brother Damon, who had made no secret of his willingness to step up as heir if Kieran failed to return. "Don't disappoint us, brother," had been Damon's parting words, delivered with a smile that never reached his eyes. "The pack needs a strong leader. If you can't provide that, well, perhaps it's time for a change." The first 3 towns Kieran visited yielded nothing but dead ends and suspicious looks from the human populations. He learned to suppress his natural dominance, to move through crowds without the predatory grace that marked him as other. It was exhausting work, fighting against every instinct that had been bred into him over generations. On the 4th day, in a small mountain town called Cedar Hollow, everything changed. She was working the evening shift at a diner that had seen better decades, her dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, her movements efficient and graceful despite the heavy exhaustion that seemed to weigh on her shoulders. Kieran noticed her immediately, not because of any obvious supernatural markers, but because of the way she moved, the way she seemed to exist in the spaces between notice, as if she had spent years perfecting the art of invisibility. When she looked up and their eyes met across the crowded diner, the world tilted on its axis. The connection hit them both like lightning, raw, electric, undeniable. The Omega, because there was no question now about what she was, dropped the coffee pot she was carrying, sending ceramic shards and scalding liquid across the floor. Kieran half rose from his booth, every cell in his body screaming at him to go to her, to protect her, to claim what was his. Instead, she ran. Kieran threw money on the table and followed her out into the parking lot, where she was fumbling with the keys to a battered Honda Civic, her hands shaking so badly she could barely fit the key in the lock. "Wait," he called out, trying to keep his voice gentle despite the urgency clawing at his chest. "Please, I'm not here to hurt you." She spun around, and in the harsh light of the parking lot lamp, Kieran saw her face clearly for the first time. She was beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with conventional features and everything to do with the strength and intelligence that burned in her dark eyes. She was also terrified. "You're one of them," she whispered, backing against her car. "I can smell the pack on you." "My name is Kieran," he said, taking a careful step closer. "I've been looking for you." "Well, you found me," she snapped, her fear transforming into anger. "Congratulations. Now leave me alone." "I can't do that." "Why not?" Kieran took a breath, knowing that his next words would change both of their lives forever. "Because you're my mate, and I'm dying without you." Secrets revealed. Her name was Luna Ashworth, and she had been running for 7 years. They talked through the night in the 24-hour laundromat where she felt safest. Public enough that he couldn't try anything, isolated enough that they couldn't be overheard. Kieran learned that she had been born into the Shadowfang Pack, a notorious clan known for their brutal treatment of Omegas. When her nature had manifested at 16, the Pack Alpha had immediately declared his intention to bind her to his eldest son as a political tool. "Binding isn't mating," Luna explained, her voice hollow with old pain. "It's ownership. They would have used my Omega abilities to strengthen their pack while keeping me locked away like a prize breeding mare. So I ran, and you've been hiding ever since." She nodded, wrapping her arms around herself. "Suppressants, scent blockers, moving every few months, working jobs that keep me invisible. It's not living, but it's surviving." Kieran felt rage building in his chest, not at her, but at the system that had forced someone so strong to hide in the shadows. "That's not why I'm here. I'm not here to bind you or own you. I need your help." He told her about his condition, about the failed transformations that were slowly killing him, about Moira's revelation that he was incomplete. Luna listened without interruption, her expression growing more thoughtful with each detail. "A split soul," she murmured when he finished. "I've heard of such things in the old stories. It's supposed to be incredibly rare. Moira says you're the other half. That bonding with you could make me whole." Luna's laugh was bitter. "And what happens to me in this arrangement? Do I get a choice, or am I just another tool for your transformation?" The question hit Kieran like a physical blow, forcing him to confront the selfishness of his quest. I hadn't thought about it that way." "Of course you hadn't. You're an alpha prince. You're used to taking what you need. That's not who I want to be." Luna studied his face for a long moment, searching for deception. What she found there seemed to surprise her. "You're serious?" "I am. I won't force anything on you. If you help me, it has to be because you choose to. And if you choose not to..." Kieran swallowed hard. "Then I'll find another way. Somehow." For the first time since they'd met, Luna's expression softened. "You're not what I expected from a Bloodmoon prince." "What did you expect?" "Someone more like your brother." Kieran went very still. "You know Damon?" Luna's face closed off again, old fear flickering in her eyes. "The Shadowfang Alpha has been in negotiations with your pack for months. Trade agreements, territory disputes. Your brother has been involved in those discussions." "Involved how?" "He's been asking questions about Omegas, specifically about unbound Omegas in neutral territories." She met his eyes. "I think he's been hunting for me." The pieces of a larger conspiracy began to fall into place in Kieran's mind. If Damon had known about Luna's existence, if he had been actively seeking her while Kieran was failing his transformations. "He wants you for himself," Kieran realized. "Or he wants to make sure you never find me." The implication hung between them like a live wire. If Kieran died from his condition, Damon would become heir. If he found Luna, but she was already claimed by another pack. "We're both in danger," Luna said quietly. "Then we face it together." Luna stared at him for a long moment, then sighed. "Against my better judgment, I'm starting to believe you might actually be different. But before I agree to anything, there's something you need to understand about the bonding ritual." "What?" "It's not just about fixing your transformation problem. A true mate bond creates a psychic link between partners. We would share emotions, sometimes thoughts. You would feel my pain, I would feel yours. It's the most intimate connection two people can share, and once it's formed..." She swallowed hard. "It can't be broken. Ever." Kieran felt the weight of that revelation settle in his chest. "Are you trying to talk me out of this?" "I'm trying to make sure you understand what you're asking for. This isn't just about saving your life anymore. You're talking about binding your soul to someone you've known for less than 12 hours. She was right, and they both knew it. But as Kieran looked at Luna, really looked at her, taking in the strength that radiated from her despite her fear, the intelligence that sparked in her eyes, the vulnerability she tried so hard to hide, he realized that the mate bond might not be the trap he had always assumed it would be. It might be the thing he had been searching for his entire life without knowing it. "What if I told you I was willing to take that risk?" Luna's breath caught. "Then I'd say you're either very brave or completely insane. Maybe both." For the first time since they'd met, Luna smiled. It transformed her entire face, revealing the warmth and humor she kept hidden beneath layers of protective armor. "All right, Prince Kieran Blackthorne," she said. "Let's see if we can save your life." The first test. The attack came at dawn. Kieran woke to the sound of Luna's scream, rolling out of the motel bed just as the window exploded inward. 3 wolves, massive, silver-furred, and moving with pack coordination, poured through the opening. Shadowfang Pack, based on their scent. "Luna, get behind me!" Kieran shouted, but she was already moving, grabbing the silver-blessed knife she kept under her pillow and slashing at the nearest attacker. The blade caught the wolf across the muzzle, sending it howling backward. Kieran tried to shift, tried to call on the transformation that had been denied to him for so long. His bones began to crack and stretch, but the change stalled halfway through, leaving him trapped between human and wolf form, vulnerable and in agony. "Kieran," Luna's voice cut through the haze of pain. "Don't fight the shift. Let it happen naturally." But there was nothing natural about his transformation. It had been broken for too long, twisted by his fractured soul into something monstrous. He was worse than useless. He was a liability. The largest of the attacking wolves, clearly the pack leader, focused on Luna with predatory intent. She was fast and clever, using the cramped motel room to her advantage, but she was still human-formed and outnumbered. It was only a matter of time before they cornered her. That's when something inside Kieran snapped. Not his bones or his muscles, but something deeper. The desperate need to protect his mate overrode every other instinct, every ingrained pattern of failure. For the first time in his life, Kieran stopped trying to force the transformation and simply let go. The change that swept through him was unlike anything he had ever experienced. Instead of the painful, incomplete shifting he was used to, this felt like coming home. His body flowed from human to wolf form, as if it had been waiting his entire life for permission to be whole. When the transformation completed, Kieran was magnificent. Larger than any wolf the Shadowfang attackers had ever seen, his fur the deep black of midnight, his eyes blazing with alpha power that made the air in the room vibrate with dominance. The three Shadowfang wolves took one look at him and tried to retreat. Kieran didn't let them. The fight was over in less than 2 minutes. When the dust settled, 2 of the attackers were unconscious, and the third was limping toward the broken window, whimpering like a beaten pup. "Tell your alpha," Kieran growled, his voice carrying even in wolf form, "that Luna Ashworth is under my protection. Anyone who touches her will answer to the Bloodmoon Pack." The wolf disappeared into the morning mist. Kieran shifted back to human form, expecting the usual disorientation and pain that followed his transformations. Instead, he felt complete, stronger than he had ever been in his life. "How?" he asked, staring at his hands as if they belonged to someone else. Luna was looking at him with an expression of wonder and fear. "The bond," she whispered. "It's already starting to form. Your wolf recognizes me as its mate, and that recognition is making you whole. Just from being near you, the mate bond doesn't follow human rules about timing and logic. It exists on a soul level. Your wolf has been incomplete because it's been waiting for me." She swallowed hard. "The question is, what do we do now?" Before Kieran could answer, his phone rang. The caller ID showed his brother's name. "Kieran," Damon's voice was smooth as silk. "I heard you ran into some trouble this morning. How did you?" "I have eyes everywhere, brother, including in the Shadowfang pack. Imagine my surprise when I learned you'd found something interesting in that little mountain town." Luna's face went pale. She mouthed the word speaker, and Kieran switched the phone so she could hear. "What do you want, Damon?" "I want you to come home. Now. And bring your little Omega with you." She's not what?" "Not yours. Not coming. Because from where I'm standing, you have 2 choices. You can return to pack territory voluntarily, or I can send enough wolves to level that entire town to bring you back. Your choice." The line went dead. Luna sank onto the bed, her face in her hands. "He's not bluffing. Damon Blackthorne has a reputation for following through on his threats." "Then we go back," Kieran said. "We face this head-on. You're talking about walking into a trap. Maybe. But if we keep running, he'll never stop hunting us. At least on pack territory, there are laws, traditions. My father is still alpha, and he won't let Damon start a war over personal ambition." Luna looked up at him with eyes that had seen too much betrayal to trust easily. "You're betting both our lives on your father's protection. I'm betting our lives on something more important than that." "What?" Kieran knelt in front of her, taking her hands in his. "I'm betting on us. On what we could become together. We're stronger when we're together, Luna. You saw it yourself. I was able to shift completely for the first time in my life because you were there. Because you believed I could." Luna stared at their joined hands for a long moment. The bonding ritual has to be completed willingly by both parties. If we go back to your pack territory, then we complete it before Damon can stop us. That's assuming we survive long enough. Kieran squeezed her hands gently. "Do you trust me?" Luna met his eyes, and he saw the moment she made her decision. "I trust you. God help me, but I trust you. Then let's go home. The return. The Bloodmoon Pack territory had never looked more ominous than it did through Luna's eyes. As they approached the main compound in Kieran's truck, she could see wolves patrolling the perimeter in both human and shifted forms. Their attention focused not on protecting the territory from outside threats, but on watching for their arrival. Second thoughts, Kieran asked, noticing her white-knuckled grip on the door handle. About 1,000 of them, Luna admitted. But we're already here. The main lodge rose before them like something out of a gothic nightmare. All dark wood and sharp angles, designed to intimidate rather than welcome. Pack members lined the circular drive, and Luna could smell the complex mix of emotions rolling off them. Curiosity, suspicion, excitement, fear. At the center of the gathering stood Alpha Magnus Blackthorne, a man whose presence commanded attention even in complete stillness. Beside him, Damon waited with a smile that made Luna's skin crawl. "Welcome home, brother," Damon called out as Kieran parked the truck. "And welcome to our territory, Miss Ashworth. We've heard so much about you." Luna felt Kieran tense beside her. "Remember," he murmured, "you're under pack protection now. He can't touch you without challenging my father's authority directly." They climbed out of the truck together, and Luna was immediately struck by the weight of dozens of werewolf gazes focused on her. She had to fight every instinct that screamed at her to run, to hide, to make herself invisible as she had for so many years. Instead, she straightened her spine and walked beside Kieran toward the pack leadership. "Father," Kieran said formally, "I present Luna Ashworth, the Omega who has been key to my successful transformation." Alpha Magnus studied Luna with the calculating gaze of a predator evaluating potential prey. "Miss Ashworth, you're younger than I expected." "Age and wisdom don't always correlate, Alpha," Luna replied evenly. "I'm sure you know that better than most." A ripple of surprise ran through the gathered pack. It wasn't often that someone spoke to Alpha Magnus with such directness, and lived to tell about it. Magnus' eyes narrowed, then he threw back his head and laughed. "I see why my son is drawn to you. You have spine. Among other qualities," Damon interjected smoothly. "I'm sure we're all curious about the nature of your relationship with my brother." Luna felt Kieran shift subtly beside her, moving just slightly in front of her in a protective gesture that didn't go unnoticed by the watching pack. "Our relationship," Kieran said carefully, "is complex." "Complex how?" Damon pressed. "Are you bonded, mated, or simply traveling companions?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Luna realized that their answer would determine not just their immediate safety, but the entire power structure of the pack. If they claimed to be mated, Damon would lose any justification for pursuing Luna himself. But he could also challenge the validity of their bond. If they admitted they weren't bonded yet, Damon could claim the right to court Luna according to pack law, potentially forcing her into a position where she had to choose between two brothers. "We are," Luna said, making a decision that surprised even herself. "In the process of forming a true mate bond. The initial connection has been established, but the ritual itself requires preparation." It was a masterful answer, technically true, but vague enough to give them room to maneuver. Elder Morrigan stepped forward, her ancient eyes bright with interest. "A true mate bond. How fascinating. It's been decades since we've had the opportunity to witness such a ritual." "If that's what this is," Damon said, his smile sharpening. "Of course, we only have their word that this Omega is actually Kieran's destined mate. There are ways to verify such claims." "What kind of ways?" Magnus asked. "The trial of bonds," Damon replied. "An ancient ceremony where potential mates must prove their connection through tests of compatibility, trust, and sacrifice. If they truly belong together, the trials will strengthen their bond. If they don't," he didn't need to finish the sentence. Everyone present knew what happened to wolves who failed the trial of bonds. The psychic backlash could leave them permanently damaged, unable to form romantic connections ever again. "The trial of bonds hasn't been used in this pack for over a century," Elder Morrigan protested. and it's dangerous even for genuine mates. But it is tradition, Damon pressed. And surely, if my brother is so confident in his connection to Miss Ashworth, he wouldn't object to proving it publicly. Kieran felt the trap closing around them. The trial of bonds would require 3 tests, each designed to push potential mates to their breaking point. Even couples who were genuinely destined for each other sometimes failed, the stress and artificial pressure disrupting their natural connection. But refusing the trial would be seen as an admission of weakness, potentially costing him any chance at the alpha position. I accept, Kieran said, ignoring Luna's sharp intake of breath. When do we begin? Alpha Magnus looked between his sons, reading the deeper currents of ambition and rivalry that flowed beneath the surface of their exchange. Tomorrow night, under the full moon, the pack will witness either the formation of a true mate bond or its destruction. As the crowd began to disperse, Damon approached them with that same cold smile. I do hope you're prepared for this, brother. The trials have a way of revealing the truth about people. All kinds of truth. After he walked away, Luna grabbed Kieran's arm. What have you done? What I had to do. You don't understand, Luna whispered urgently. There's something I haven't told you about my past with the Shadowfang pack. Something that could destroy us both if it comes out during the trials. Kieran felt ice form in his stomach. What? Luna looked around to make sure they weren't being overheard, then leaned closer. I was bonded before, to the Shadowfang Alpha's son. The bond was forced, incomplete, but it existed. If the trials reveal that connection. She met his eyes, her own filled with fear. They could use it to claim that I'm not free to bond with you, that I'm still technically bound to another pack. The full scope of Damon's trap became clear. He hadn't just maneuvered them into a dangerous trial. He had somehow discovered Luna's deepest secret and planned to use it to destroy them both. How could he know about that? I don't know. But if he does, Luna's voice broke. Kieran, I could lose you before we ever have a real chance. And you could lose everything. Kieran pulled her into his arms, feeling the tremor of fear that ran through her body. Then we make sure that doesn't happen. How? By completing our bond tonight, before the trials. If we're truly mated, whatever happened in your past won't matter. Luna pulled back to look at him. Are you sure about this? Once we're bonded, there's no going back. Ever. Kieran cupped her face in his hands, seeing past her fear to the strength and love that lay beneath. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Even knowing it might cost you your birthright, my birthright is worthless if I can't share it with you. Luna searched his eyes for any trace of doubt, any sign that he was making this decision out of desperation rather than genuine feeling. What she found there made her heart race. All right, she whispered. Let's do this. Chapter 7, The Bonding. Emotional climax, 45 to 55 minutes. The sacred grove lay 3 miles into the deep woods that bordered Bloodmoon territory, hidden from pack lands by ancient protection spells that made it invisible to all but those who knew exactly where to look. Kieran and Luna arrived just as the moon reached its zenith, casting silver light through the canopy of ancient oaks. This place is beautiful, Luna breathed, taking in the circle of standing stones that marked the ceremonial space. Each stone was carved with symbols that predated written language, representations of the bond between Earth, Moon, and the wild spirits that dwelt between worlds. It's where my parents were bonded, Kieran said, running his fingers along one of the carved stones. And their parents before them. The magic here is old, powerful. Luna nodded, but he could sense her nervousness through the growing connection between them. Tell me again how this works. The ritual has 3 parts, Kieran explained, moving to the center of the stone circle. First, the offering of truth. We share our deepest fears, our greatest shames, the things we've never told anyone else. The bond can't be built on lies or secrets. All of them. Luna swallowed hard but nodded. What's second? The sharing of power. We open ourselves completely to each other, not just emotionally, but spiritually. I'll feel everything you feel, know everything you know. You'll have access to my alpha strength, and I'll be connected to your omega intuition. And third, Kieran's voice grew softer. We mark each other, permanently and irrevocably. From that moment forward, we'll be two halves of the same soul. Luna was quiet for a long moment, absorbing the magnitude of what they were about to do. And if something goes wrong, then we face the consequences together. She looked up at him, moonlight highlighting the sharp angles of his face, the strength in his jaw, the gentleness in his eyes that she was only beginning to understand. I'm ready. They began with the offering of truth. Kieran spoke first, his voice steady despite the vulnerability required to bare his soul to someone he had known for less than a week. I've spent my entire life feeling like a failure, he admitted. Not just because of the transformation problem, but because I could never live up to the image of what an alpha should be. I'm not ruthless enough for my father, not political enough for the pack elders, not ambitious enough to satisfy the expectations placed on me from birth. He paused, gathering courage for the deeper confession. The truth is, I've always been afraid that if people really knew me, not the prince, not the heir, but just Kieran, they would find me lacking. That's why I've never formed close relationships. Why I've kept everyone at arm's length. I was afraid of the moment when they would look at me and realize I wasn't worth their time. Luna felt his pain through their growing bond, the deep well of insecurity that he had hidden beneath layers of royal training and alpha posturing. But you are worth it, she said softly. You're worth everything. Then it was her turn. I've told you about running from the Shadowfang pack, she began, her voice barely above a whisper. But I haven't told you why it took me so long to escape. Kieran remained silent, sensing that this confession would be harder for her than any physical trial they might face. I was in love with him, Luna continued, the words falling like stones into still water. Marcus Shadowfang, the Alpha's son. Not the kind of love that poets write about, something darker, more desperate. I thought if I loved him enough, if I was perfect enough, maybe he would choose to bond with me willingly instead of forcing the connection. She looked up at the moon, unable to meet Kieran's eyes. For 3 years, I convinced myself that his possessiveness was protection, that his control was care. I let him isolate me from everyone who might have helped me escape because I was afraid of losing the only person who had ever claimed to want me. Kieran felt her shame and self-loathing through their connection, but underneath it, he also felt the incredible strength it had taken for her to finally break free. When I realized he would never see me as anything more than property, Luna finished, I knew I had to leave. But the bond we had formed, it left scars. Sometimes I can still feel him, like a whisper in the back of my mind. I've been afraid that those scars would prevent me from ever truly connecting with someone else. She finally looked at Kieran, tears streaming down her face. I'm afraid I'm too broken to be your mate. Kieran crossed the circle in 3 strides, pulling her into his arms. You're not broken, he said fiercely. You're a survivor. And the fact that you're willing to risk your heart again, despite everything you've been through, that makes you the strongest person I've ever met. The sharing of power began without conscious decision from either of them. The emotional connection they had forged through truth-telling deepened and expanded, until Luna could feel Kieran's wolf stirring restlessly beneath his human consciousness, could sense the alpha dominance that he kept carefully controlled in her presence. In return, Kieran felt the vast well of Omega power that Luna had kept suppressed for so long. Not weakness, as pack propaganda claimed, but a different kind of strength entirely. Where alpha power was about control and domination, Omega power was about connection and healing. It was the ability to soothe rage, to bridge differences, to find harmony in chaos. Together, they were more than the sum of their parts. The claiming, when it came, was inevitable as sunrise. They moved together in the moonlight, every touch electric with supernatural energy, every kiss sealing their bond more completely. When Kieran's teeth found the sensitive juncture between Luna's neck and shoulder, marking her as his mate, she felt his soul merge with hers in a rush of connection, so intense it left them both breathless. Luna's own claiming bite, delivered to the same spot on Kieran's throat, completed the circuit between them. Power flowed back and forth like electricity, alpha and omega energies intertwining until they couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. When it was over, they lay tangled together in the soft grass at the center of the stone circle, permanently and irrevocably changed. "How do you feel?" Kieran asked, his voice rough with exhaustion and wonder. Luna stretched, marveling at the new sensations flowing through her body. She could feel Kieran's heartbeat as if it were her own, could sense his emotions like colored threads weaving through her consciousness. "Complete," she whispered. "For the first time in my life, I feel complete." Kieran propped himself up on one elbow, studying the intricate pattern of silver lines that now traced along Luna's collarbone. The physical manifestation of their bond, visible only to other supernatural creatures. "Tomorrow's trials," he said, reality intruding on their moment of peace. "Tomorrow's trials will prove what we already know," Luna replied with new confidence. "We belong together. Let Damon bring his worst. We can face anything now." But even as she spoke the words, neither of them noticed the figure watching from the tree line, golden eyes glowing with rage and betrayal as Damon Blackthorne witnessed the completion of the bond that would change everything. The trial of bonds. The pack had gathered in the ceremonial amphitheater carved into the living rock at the heart of Bloodmoon territory. Hundreds of wolves, both in human and shifted forms, filled the stone seats that ringed the central arena where the trials would take place. The air thrummed with anticipation and the complex scent signatures of pack members whose loyalties were divided between the two Blackthorne brothers. Luna and Kieran stood in the center of the arena, their newly completed mate bond a source of strength that flowed between them like molten silver. The marking bites on their throats had healed overnight, leaving behind intricate silver tracework that proclaimed their bonded status to anyone with supernatural sight. Alpha Magnus presided from the elevated throne at the north end of the amphitheater, his expression unreadable as he surveyed the assembled pack. Beside him, Elder Morrigan clutched her ceremonial staff with white knuckles, clearly uncomfortable with the proceedings. "Let the trial of bonds commence," Magnus announced, his voice carrying easily across the stone arena. "The first test, truth under pressure." Damon stepped forward, now dressed in ceremonial robes that marked him as the trial's officiator, a role that gave him significant power to shape the proceedings. "Brother Miss Ashworth," he said with mock formality, "the first trial will test the honesty of your bond. I will ask you questions, and you must answer with complete truthfulness. The magic of this place will reveal any deception." Luna felt a chill of premonition. Through their bond, she could sense Kieran's growing unease as well. "Kieran," Damon began, "before meeting Luna, had you ever successfully completed a full transformation?" "No," Kieran answered, his voice steady. "And Luna, before bonding with my brother, had you ever been romantically involved with another werewolf?" This was it, the trap they had both been dreading. Luna felt the weight of hundreds of gazes fixed upon her as she made her choice. "Yes," she said clearly. A ripple of shocked whispers ran through the assembled pack. This was not the answer they had expected from someone claiming to be Kieran's destined mate. "Interesting," Damon continued, his smile sharp as a blade. "And what was the nature of that involvement?" "I was manipulated into a forced bonding with Marcus Shadowfong," Luna replied, her voice growing stronger with each word. "A connection I broke when I escaped their territory 7 years ago." "Broke?" Damon's eyebrows rose in feigned surprise. "But everyone knows that mate bonds cannot be broken. They are permanent, eternal connections between souls." Luna felt Kieran's anger flare through their bond, but she squeezed his hand in warning. This was her battle to fight. "You're correct that true mate bonds cannot be broken," she said. "What I shared with Marcus Shadowfong was not a true mate bond. It was a forced connection created through coercion and sustained by fear. When I found the strength to leave, that artificial bond shattered." "Artificial or not," Damon pressed, "the fact remains that you have been bonded to another werewolf. How can you claim that Kieran is your destined mate when you have already given that connection to someone else?" The crowd murmured agreement, the pack's natural suspicion of outsiders combining with their uncertainty about Luna's past. Elder Morrigan stood from her seat beside the Alpha's throne, her ancient voice cutting through the whispers. "I would remind the officiator," she said pointedly, "that the trial of bonds is designed to test the strength of the connection between potential mates, not to relitigate past relationships that have been dissolved." "Of course, honored elder," Damon replied with false deference. "I simply want to ensure that the pack fully understands the complexity of Miss Ashworth's romantic history before we proceed." He turned back to Luna with predatory focus. "Tell me, during your time with the Shadowfang pack, were you ever marked? Did Marcus Shadowfang leave any permanent claim upon your body or spirit?" Luna's blood ran cold. This was the question she had been dreading, the secret that could destroy everything she and Kieran had built together. Through their bond, she felt Kieran's confusion and growing alarm. He didn't understand why this question had struck her like a physical blow, didn't know about the scar hidden beneath her clothing. A mark that Marcus had carved into her skin during one of his more violent possessive episodes. The scar itself meant nothing in supernatural law. It was not a mate mark, carried no magical significance. But in the context of these trials, with Damon manipulating every detail to serve his agenda, it could be twisted into evidence that Luna was still connected to her former captor. "Answer the question, Miss Ashworth," Damon pressed when she hesitated. "Remember, the magic of this place will reveal any deception." Luna looked up at Kieran, seeing her own fear reflected in his eyes. Through their bond, she felt his unwavering support, his absolute faith in her regardless of what secrets her past might hold. That faith gave her the courage to tell the truth. "Yes," she said, her voice carrying clearly across the amphitheater. "Marcus Shadowfang did mark me, but not as a mate, as property. He carved his initials into my skin to remind me that I belonged to him, that I could never escape his control." She reached for the collar of her shirt, then stopped. "I can show you the scar if you require proof, but I think we all understand what kind of male carves his name into a woman's flesh." The pack's reaction was immediate and visceral. Growls of disgust and anger rose from the assembled wolves as they processed what Luna had revealed. In werewolf culture, scarring a potential mate was considered one of the most despicable acts possible, a sign of weakness and insecurity in the perpetrator. Damon, realizing that his carefully laid trap had backfired, tried to regain control of the narrative. "Nevertheless, the fact remains that you carry another male's mark." "I carry the scars of my survival," Luna interrupted, her voice rising with righteous anger. "Just as every wolf in this pack carries the marks of battles they have fought and won. The difference is that my battles were fought against someone who should have been protecting me instead of harming me." She turned to address the pack directly, ignoring Damon entirely. "You want to know about my past? Here it is. I spent 3 years trapped by a male who saw me as an object to be owned rather than a person to be cherished. I endured abuse, isolation, and manipulation because I was young and afraid and had been taught that submission was my only value as an Omega." Her voice grew stronger with each word, Omega power flowing through her speech and touching every heart in the amphitheater. "When I finally found the courage to leave, I spent 7 years running and hiding, convinced that I was too damaged to ever deserve real love. And then I met Kieran." She turned back to her mate, love and gratitude shining in her eyes. "He looked at my scars and saw strength. He learned about my fears and offered protection without demanding submission. He gave me the choice to bond with him freely, without coercion or manipulation. That is what a true mate does. He sees your wounds and helps you heal, rather than adding new ones." The pack fell silent, moved by the raw honesty in Luna's words. Even Alpha Magnus leaned forward in his throne, studying the young Omega with new respect. Kieran stepped forward, his own voice carrying alpha authority as he addressed his brother. "Is this what you call justice, Damon? Forcing a survivor to relive her trauma for your political games?" "I'm simply trying to ensure that our pack's future leadership is based on truth rather than deception," Damon replied, but his confident demeanor was cracking. "The only deception here," Kieran shot back, "is your pretense that you care about anything other than removing me from the line of succession." "Enough!" Alpha Magnus commanded, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade. The first trial is complete. Both candidates have answered truthfully, and their bond has been tested under pressure. We proceed to the second trial. But as the pack prepared for the next phase of the ceremony, none of them noticed the group of wolves slipping through the shadows at the edge of the amphitheater. Shadowfang Pack members, led by Marcus himself, drawn by the psychic resonance of Luna's public confession. The real test was about to begin. Blood and betrayal. The second trial, the test of sacrifice, had barely begun when the attack came. Marcus Shadowfang emerged from the forest surrounding the amphitheater with 24 of his pack's fiercest warriors, their eyes glowing with predatory hunger as they took in the scene before them. Luna's scent, no longer masked by suppressants, had drawn them across 3 territories like a beacon. "Well, well," Marcus called out, his voice carrying easily across the stone arena. "What do we have here?" My runaway Omega, playing house with the Bloodmoon Prince. The Bloodmoon Pack exploded into defensive positions, but Marcus's wolves had chosen their moment perfectly. With Luna and Kieran isolated in the center of the amphitheater for the trials, they were vulnerable and exposed. "Marcus," Luna breathed, her face going pale as she saw her former captor for the first time in 7 years. He was exactly as she remembered, tall, powerful, with the kind of classical handsome features that hid a rotting core of cruelty and possessiveness. "Hello, little wolf," Marcus said, his smile cold as winter. "Did you really think you could hide from me forever? Did you think that pathetic excuse for a bond could protect you from your true mate?" "You are not her mate," Kieran snarled, moving protectively in front of Luna. "You never were." Marcus laughed, the sound echoing off the stone walls. "Is that what she told you? How touching. Luna, darling, show your new friend the mark you carry. Show him who you really belong to." "The only thing that mark shows," Luna said, finding her voice despite the fear coursing through her, "is that you are a coward who hurts women when you can't control them." Marcus's expression darkened. "Careful, Omega. You may have fooled these Bloodmoon fools with your sob story, but we both know the truth. You came to me willingly. You begged me to bond with you. I was 16 and terrified," Luna shot back. "You manipulated a frightened child." "Enough talking," Marcus snarled, beginning to shift to his wolf form. "You're coming home with me, Luna. One way or another." That's when Damon made his move. Instead of defending his pack's territory against the Shadowfang invasion, Damon stepped beside Marcus, revealing the alliance he had been building in secret. "Brother," he said to Kieran, his voice carrying false regret, "I tried to warn you. This Omega brings nothing but trouble to our pack. The honorable thing to do is return her to her rightful mate and end this conflict before it escalates." The betrayal hit the assembled pack like a physical blow. Gasps of shock and outrage rose from the wolves who had served the Blackthorne family for generations. Alpha Magnus rose from his throne, his face thunderous with rage. "Damon, what is the meaning of this?" "I'm saving our pack, father," Damon replied, his mask of concern finally dropping to reveal the ambition beneath. "Kieran's obsession with this Omega has already brought war to our doorstep. How many of our people will die for his selfish desires?" "This is not war," Magnus snarled. "This is trespass. Shadowfang Pack has no authority here." "Actually," Marcus interjected, "according to the old laws, an Omega who flees from a bonded mate can be reclaimed by force. The bond we shared gives me legal right to her return." Elder Morrigan stepped forward, her ancient eyes blazing with fury. "The bond you speak of was created through coercion. It has no standing in supernatural law." "Prove it," Marcus challenged. "Let Luna submit to a truth reading under full pack witness. If she can honestly say that she never willingly accepted my suit, never asked for my protection, never welcomed my touch, then I'll withdraw my claim." Luna felt the trap closing around them. The truth reading would force her to relive every moment of her relationship with Marcus, including the early days when her fear and inexperience had been mistaken for willing participation. Even if the reading ultimately vindicated her, the process would be traumatic beyond measure, and it would give Marcus exactly what he wanted: power over her fear. "I won't do it," she said clearly. "I won't subject myself to further abuse for the entertainment of males who should know better." "Then you admit that your claims are false," Damon said triumphantly. "The honorable course is clear. The honorable course," a new voice cut across the amphitheater, "is for everyone to shut up and listen to the Omega herself." Moira Ravenscroft stepped into the arena, her ancient power making the air itself tremble. The witch had arrived at the perfect moment, her presence changing the entire dynamic of the confrontation. "Honored witch," Alpha Magnus said with genuine respect, "your counsel is welcome." Moira ignored him, focusing entirely on Luna. "Child, you have spent 7 years running from a truth that you already know. Tell me, when you first met Marcus Shadowfang, what did your Omega instincts tell you about him?" Luna closed her eyes, remembering that first encounter with painful clarity. "They told me to run. Every instinct I had screamed danger, but I ignored them because I was young and desperate to belong somewhere." "And when you met Kieran?" A smile touched Luna's lips despite the dangerous situation surrounding them. "My instincts told me I was home." Moira nodded, then turned to Marcus with contempt blazing in her ancient eyes. "False bonds can be created through manipulation, coercion, and trauma bonding, but they leave signatures in the soul that any trained practitioner can read. Would you like me to examine the connection between you and Luna, Marcus Shadowfang?" Marcus took an involuntary step backward. "That won't be necessary." "I thought not," Moira said with satisfaction, "because we both know what I would find. The remnants of a forced connection created through psychological abuse and sustained by fear. A connection that shattered the moment Luna found the strength to choose her own path." She raised her staff, power crackling around its carved surface. "But if you insist on pressing your claim, I'm prepared to demonstrate the difference between a false bond and a true one." Marcus's wolves began to shift nervously, recognizing the magnitude of power they were facing. Even Marcus himself seemed to realize that he had overplayed his hand. But Damon wasn't finished. "This is all very touching," he said, "but it doesn't change the fundamental problem. Kieran's association with this Omega has brought violence to our territory and threatens the stability of our pack. As his brother and the secondary heir, I invoke the right of challenge." The amphitheater fell silent. The right of challenge was an ancient law that allowed any pack member to contest leadership decisions they believed threatened the pack's survival. It could only be resolved through single combat between the challenger and the current heir. "Damon, no," Alpha Magnus said, his voice heavy with sorrow. "Don't force this choice. The choice has already been made, Father. Kieran chose an outsider over his own blood, over his own pack. I choose to protect what you and our ancestors built." Kieran felt Luna's anguish through their bond, her guilt at being the catalyst for this family destruction. He squeezed her hand reassuringly. "I accept your challenge, brother," he said formally. "But when I win, you and your Shadowfang allies leave my territory and never return." "And when I win," Damon countered, "Luna Ashworth returns with Marcus Shadowfang, and you renounce all claim to leadership of this pack." The terms were set. The brothers would fight in wolf form until one submitted or was killed. The winner would determine not only the future of the pack, but Luna's fate as well. As the combatants prepared to shift, Luna made a decision that would change everything. "Stop," she called out, her Omega voice carrying supernatural authority that made every wolf in the amphitheater freeze. "There's another way. The Omega's choice. I invoke the right of Omega judgment," Luna announced, her voice carrying clearly across the stunned amphitheater. Elder Morgan gasped, nearly dropping her ceremonial staff. "Child, that law hasn't been used in over 3 centuries. But it still exists," Luna said firmly. "And according to the old ways, when an Omega's fate is being decided by males who claim ownership over her, she has the right to set her own trial." Moira Ravenscroft smiled, her ancient eyes gleaming with approval. The girl knows her history. Yes, the right of Omega judgment supersedes all other pack laws when an Omega's autonomy is in question. Alpha Magnus looked between his sons, then at Luna, clearly struggling with the unprecedented situation. "What trial do you propose, Miss Ashworth?" Luna took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her decision. "A test of worthiness. Any male who claims the right to bond with me must prove himself worthy not through combat or political maneuvering, but through demonstrating the qualities that matter to an Omega: compassion, selflessness, and genuine respect." Marcus sneered. "What kind of trial is that? Combat has decided such matters for millennia." "Combat decides who is strongest," Luna replied. "But strength without honor is worthless. An Omega needs a mate who will cherish her, protect her without controlling her, and put her well-being above his own desires." She turned to address the entire pack. "The trial I propose is this. Each candidate must demonstrate their commitment to my welfare by giving up something precious to them, something that matters more than their claim to me." The implications of her challenge sent ripples of shock through the assembled wolves. Luna was essentially asking her suitors to prove their love by sacrificing their own desires. "I'll go first," Marcus declared, stepping forward with characteristic arrogance. "I sacrifice my claim to the Shadowfang territory expansion we've been negotiating with the Bloodmoon Pack. I give up potential land and resources to prove my commitment to Luna." The pack murmured, impressed despite themselves. Territory was precious to any werewolf, and Marcus's sacrifice seemed significant. But Luna shook her head. "That sacrifice costs you nothing that truly matters to you, Marcus. You're trading land you don't yet own for an Omega you see as property. Try again." Marcus's face darkened with rage. "What would you have me sacrifice?" "My pack. My title. I would have you sacrifice your need to own me," Luna said quietly. "But we both know you can't do that." Marcus snarled, beginning to shift toward his wolf form. But Moira's power held him frozen in place. "The Omega has rejected your sacrifice," the witch announced. "You may not try again." All eyes turned to Damon, who had been watching the proceedings with growing unease. He had not expected Luna to outmaneuver him so completely, to turn the entire situation to her advantage. "Brother?" Kieran prompted when Damon remained silent. "Aye." Damon struggled visibly with the choice before him. "I sacrifice my challenge to Kieran's leadership. I withdraw my claim to the alpha position and accept his authority." It was a significant offer, one that would restore peace to the pack and eliminate the political threat that had started this entire conflict. But again, Luna shook her head. "Your sacrifice is conditional on getting what you want," she observed. "You're only willing to give up power if you gain control over me in return. That's not sacrifice, it's bargaining." Damon's carefully constructed facade finally cracked completely. "What do you want from me?" he snarled. "I'm offering to give up everything I've worked for." "You're offering to trade one form of control for another," Luna corrected. "But you've never asked what I actually want. You've never considered that my desires might matter as much as yours." She turned to Kieran, love shining in her eyes. "Your turn." Kieran stepped forward, and Luna felt his inner turmoil through their bond. She knew what this trial was costing him, knew that she was asking him to give up the very thing that had brought them together. "I sacrifice my claim to Luna," he said, his voice steady despite the pain the words caused him. "If she chooses to leave with Marcus, if she decides she doesn't want the mate bond we've formed, I will not pursue her. I will not fight for her. I will let her go, even though it will kill me." The pack fell silent, stunned by the magnitude of his sacrifice. Kieran was offering to give up his destined mate, the love of his life, the one person who could make him complete. "And," Kieran continued, his voice breaking slightly, "I sacrifice my birthright as alpha heir. Whether Luna chooses me or not, I will not lead this pack if my presence brings her pain or puts her in danger. I would rather live as an exile than rule knowing my choices caused her suffering." Luna felt tears streaming down her face as the full weight of his sacrifice hit her. Through their bond, she could feel his absolute sincerity, his willingness to lose everything for her happiness. "That," she whispered, "is what true love looks like." She turned to address the pack one final time. "I choose Kieran Blackthorne as my mate, not because he won some contest or proved his dominance, but because he's the only one who offered to put my well-being above his own desires. He's the only one who saw me as a person rather than a prize. The pack erupted in cheers, but the celebration was short-lived. Marcus, realizing that he had lost Luna forever, made one last desperate attack. He completed his shift to wolf form and lunged toward Luna, intending to mark her by force if he couldn't claim her through law. But he had forgotten about the bond Luna now shared with Kieran. The moment Marcus moved, both Luna and Kieran felt the threat through their connection. They shifted simultaneously, Luna to her wolf form for the first time in 7 years, Kieran to the powerful alpha wolf that his bond with Luna had finally allowed him to become. They met Marcus's attack together, two halves of a perfect whole, their combined power overwhelming the Shadowfang alpha completely. The fight lasted less than 30 seconds. When it was over, Marcus lay unconscious at their feet, and his remaining wolves had submitted in surrender. "Let this be a lesson," Alpha Magnus announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the amphitheater. "True strength comes not from dominance, but from the bonds we forge with those we love." Kieran and Luna have proven themselves worthy of leadership through their willingness to sacrifice for each other. He stood from his throne, removing the ceremonial alpha torque from around his neck. "I hereby name Kieran Blackthorne as my successor, with Luna Ashworth Blackthorne as his mate and equal partner in leadership. May their bond bring strength and prosperity to the Bloodmoon Pack for generations to come." As the pack cheered and howled their approval, Kieran and Luna stood together in the center of the amphitheater, their hands clasped, their bond stronger than ever. They had faced betrayal, overcome their past traumas, and proved that love could triumph over manipulation and control. They had found in each other not just mates, but partners who would face whatever challenges lay ahead as equals. "So," Luna said, smiling up at her mate as the celebration continued around them, "what happens now?" Kieran pulled her into his arms, his heart full of love and hope for their future. "Now we build something better. A pack where strength comes from unity, where omegas are cherished rather than controlled, where love matters more than power. Together, always together." As the moon reached its zenith above the amphitheater, casting silver light over the celebrating pack, Kieran and Luna began the first day of their new life. Complete, united, and ready to face whatever adventures awaited them. The broken prince had found his missing piece, and in doing so, had discovered that true power came not from dominance, but from the courage to love without conditions. Their story was just beginning. The new beginnings. 6 months later, the Bloodmoon Pack had transformed in ways no one could have imagined. Under Kieran and Luna's joint leadership, the pack had implemented revolutionary changes. Omegas were no longer treated as property to be bartered between families, but as valued members whose unique gifts were celebrated and protected. The old laws about forced bonding were formally abolished, replaced with statutes that prioritized consent and free choice in all romantic partnerships. Luna had established a sanctuary for supernatural refugees. Wolves fleeing abusive packs, omegas seeking safety, young shifters who needed guidance and support. The sanctuary had already helped dozens of individuals find new homes and new hope. Kieran had proven himself as a leader who ruled through compassion rather than fear, earning the loyalty and respect of even those pack members who had initially opposed his relationship with Luna. His transformations were now flawless, his bond with Luna giving him access to power he had never dreamed possible. As for Damon, he had ultimately chosen exile over submission, leaving Bloodmoon territory with a small group of followers who shared his old-fashioned views about pack hierarchy. There had been no further contact, though intelligence suggested he was attempting to establish his own pack in neutral territory. Marcus Shadowfang had been returned to his pack in disgrace, his failed attempt to reclaim Luna having cost him significant standing among his own wolves. The Shadowfang pack had formally apologized for the territorial violation and signed a non-aggression pact that would protect Luna from any future claims. But perhaps the most significant change was the one that couldn't be measured in laws or politics. The pack was happy. For the first time in generations, the Bloodmoon wolves lived without fear of their leaders, secure in the knowledge that their alpha and his mate truly cared about their well-being. On a warm evening in late spring, Kieran and Luna stood together on the balcony of the Pack house, watching the sun set over their territory. Luna's hand rested on her still flat stomach, protecting the new life growing within. The first child born to a truly bonded alpha and omega pair in over a century. Nervous? Kieran asked, sensing her mixed emotions through their bond. Terrified, Luna admitted, but excited too. This baby will grow up in a world where their nature, whatever it turns out to be, will be celebrated rather than feared. Alpha, Omega, or Beta, Kieran agreed. They'll be loved unconditionally. Luna leaned into his embrace, marveling at how far they had both come from that first night in the diner when she had tried to run from destiny. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "Giving up the life you planned for the one we built together?" Kieran's arms tightened around her. "Never. The life I planned was empty compared to what we have now. Besides," he added with a grin, "I seem to remember someone once telling me that true strength comes from the bonds we forge with those we love." Wise woman, whoever she was. The wisest. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Kieran and Luna stood together in comfortable silence, their bond humming with contentment and love. They had faced down ancient prejudices, overcome personal traumas, and built something beautiful from the ashes of old systems that no longer served their people. Their story had begun with a broken prince and a hidden omega, but it had become something much larger. A tale of transformation, not just for themselves, but for an entire way of life. They had proven that love could triumph over hate, that strength could come from vulnerability, that true power lay in serving others rather than dominating them. And somewhere in the distance, carried on the night wind, came the howl of a young wolf finding their voice for the first time. A sound that spoke of new beginnings, fresh possibilities, and a future bright with promise. The Bloodmoon Pack's golden age had begun. If you want to keep enjoying contents like this, click on the subscribe button, like, and share. Also tell us what part of the story is your favorite in the comment section. Thank you.